This is a quick demo of utilizing Freshbooks on Wakanda with server-side JavaScript. When you unzip the zip file that's provided on the blog, you will have a modules directory with a subdirectory called Freshbooks with 3 JavaScript classes, which we will go into more detail later. You'll also have a scripts directory with a play.js script. This is the script that we're going to look at this moment, because this is the script that drives the create, read, update actions of the client API of Freshbooks. Now, this is following the common JS structure for doing modules. So these first few lines are just requiring the client object and the assertion unit test framework. The important thing is you need to provide your URL and token. Now, where do you get that? Okay, in the Freshbooks, when you log in, you'll see this page and you'll see how many clients you have, and you can come into your account and then go to Freshbooks API, and you'll find your URL and your authentication token. Now, don't worry about my exposing it. As soon as this video is recorded, I'll reset it. So take those two values, bring them into the script, and replace these tokens in URL. But what you'll find if you read the documentation, or when you read the documentation, is first off, go to developers.freshbook.com and read the authentication, and you'll find out that to make all these CRUD requests, you have to use a token-based authentication. And part of it is that it expects it to be in base 64, which it doesn't really call out here, but if you research enough, you'll find out. And it expects to have a password of X. Well, since that's a static thing, what I decided was, rather than bring in JavaScript code to calculate the base 64, I found an online page that would do it for me. So this is my token, and here's the :X to delineate the password. And clicking this button here, I then get back the base 64 encoded URL and password. So what you'll do with that value, and this is all documented in the source code, what you do with that base 64 is you'll replace this value with the whole thing. So let's go ahead and walk through this script. But before we do that, let's just confirm that in Freshbooks we're going to be using this client's API. We're going to be doing a create, an update, a get, and a delete. I am not doing lists. Whoever wants to pick this up, feel free. So we'll be looking at the clients, and we want to confirm through the UI that I don't have any clients right now, so nothing up my sleeve. So let's go to Wakanda, and we're in the play.js. We're doing server-side JavaScript. We're going to start the script off, and the debugger is on my other screen. So the first thing is we're going to create an instance of a client JavaScript object and pass in the URL and the base 64. And the 3 assertions following are just to confirm that the class was instantiated correctly and the values are in the class. So what we're going to start off with here is just setting an email and then creating the instance in Freshbooks. So let's go to Freshbooks. Let's reload this page, and there we have foo at bar. So now we're just getting the ID of the client, saving it so we can reuse it. We're getting another instance of the client object. Now you have to be careful because of the XML HTTP request object gets in these states, so I found it just as easy to create a new instance of the class and everything has the right state then. So we're going to go back out. We've created a new client, we've initialized the client ID, and now we're going to do a read. Now this assertion is confirming that the object is now instantiated and it has an email address, and it should be what we had set up further. So we assert that's true. Now we want to go ahead and update. So we make another instance of the client, we reset the client ID, and we change the email and re-update it. Now let's make sure that that update occurred. So we're going to read and then confirm that the value of the email has been changed. And so that assertion works. Now this gets interesting. And what you're going to see here, I believe, is a problem with the Wakanda debugger, and you'll see why. And it's been notified in the forum, and I'm in the dev build, so hopefully it'll get addressed before it's released. But what we're going to do here is we're going to destroy. Now you can't use the word delete on your Java class because delete is a keyword or a reserved word. So let's step into this destroy. So now I'm in my class called client. Here's my name of my class, and I'm in the function called destroy, and I'm building up my request, my XML request, and I'm going to just step over that. And now if I wished I could step into this, but if I do step into it, you'll see that it kind of gets lost, and this has also been reported on the forum. This is an issue with the debugger. The code works fine, it's just the debugger gets lost in these common JS object-oriented inheritance. So I'm going to step out then, because I can't see what's going on anyway. So let's go see if that really got destroyed. So let's see, we first had the object that we created, and we refresh, and sure enough it's gone. So it's been destroyed, it's been deleted. So now let's go back out and try to read that object. Same client ID. Let's step in here. Here we're making the request to get the client ID. We're going to send the data, and notice how the breakpoint went somewhere else, or the line went somewhere else. Well, it's really trying to find where this error is occurring. Over on the right hand side, what we're going to see is that the client ID is not found. Now I'm not sure why that error message is coming up, because that's coming up from my framework trying to retrieve the client ID from the read function, but we shouldn't even be in there because we are doing a AJAX call synchronously. So there's an error in this AJAX call, and you'll see what it is in just a second. So I'm going to step out. What I have is in the read, the call actually failed. If we look at this, we're going to see inside of this object, we're going to see the component that does the XML, the AJAX call, and we'll see what the value is in there. So my object is called client. Inside of my client is the XHR, which is the AJAX, and you'll see the response string here says that we were okay with the 200 as far as the request went, but the response says that it failed because the client ID is not found, the client is deleted. Okay, so that's why in the framework I check for that return and I throw an exception. So if I had not thrown an exception, this would have failed, but instead we catch the error and we can look at the message here, and it's the same message that we got in the response. If it'll come up, there we go. Client ID not found, client is deleted. So we're getting the right behavior that we expect. And let's finish that. And so the log ends, and we go back over to here, and there is no client. So I have a little bit of time. Let's look at the code real quick. The first base class is class JS. This is a class that has been provided by John Resick, who is of the jQuery fame. He wrote this simple JavaScript inheritance framework. I use his code. You can read about it. It's documented on my forum or my blog. What's interesting in what I've written is the first base class of that, which is HTTP request or HTTP client. Excuse me. This extends the class object. The init is basically the constructor, takes in the two parameters, stores them, builds a AJAX request and an object to get the response. There's a little function here to get some values out of the XML tags that are returned from Freshbook. The send method sends the data that's passed in, it posts it, it uses the authorization of the base64, it gets back the response text as JSON, it then parses that, and then here's where it's checking to see, is there a problem with the data? Did it fail? And that's what we saw in the read of a deleted object. And then there's a helper function here that the client class will utilize, or other classes that you might develop, this will help you get the data out of that XML document that's returned from FreshBooks. So let's look at the client class itself. This is extending the HTTP client. It has a constructor. It calls it super. The super is HTTP client. And then it initializes 3 attributes. I'm only using 3. FreshBooks supports a lot more. I'm keeping it real simple. And setAllData is just a little function that all it does is it calls a base class to get the element and the attribute or the sub-element of that XML for the client ID, the email, and the username. The username is assigned by FreshBooks, excuse me. And so we have a create object where this is the XML that we're using from the developer's guide here of what your request looks like. It has a client request, client.create. And then we send it to the base class, and when it returns, we get our data for the client ID. The read makes a different request, sends the content, and then gets all the data stored up. The update has a different type of request. It has client.update, and it passes in 3 attributes that might be changed, sends that across the wire, and then here's the destroy. That's all there is for the CRUD of this client. So look through the source code that I have provided in the zip, and I'll have some documentation on the blog that goes through it with a little bit more detail. But I hope this helps you so that you can set it up. Thank you.